In the year 1878, long after the war had burned itself out and the hills of Appalachia had settled into uneasy silence, there was a road that didn't appear on any county map. It cut between McDowell Ridge and the Pine Fork River, a path so narrow that wagon wheels left grooves in stone. The locals called it the Hollow Road, though no one alive remembered who'd first carved it out. At its end stood a single structure, a house with no family, no laughter, and no owner to claim it. The Marin House. Even in daylight, it looked misplaced, as if time had forgotten to carry it forward. The clapboard siding, once white as bone, had turned the color of candle soot. Its windows watched the valley with glass eyes clouded by decades of dust. Travelers said that when fog crawled up from the creek, it always lingered there curling around the eaves, sliding between the porch rails, whispering through the open door that never seemed to stay shut. For 20 years the house had been empty. Or so the people of Elk Hollow insisted. The town that time held still Elk Hollow was little more than a dozen cabins, a sawmill, and a one-room church that doubled as a schoolhouse when the preacher's wife was willing to teach. The air smelled of wood smoke and iron. Men rose before dawn to work the coal seams or fell timber on the slopes. At night, the valley glowed with lamplight leaking through cracked shutters. The mountains hemmed the town in so tightly that sunrise came late and dusk arrived early. No one in Elk Hollow liked to speak of the Marin House, not because it frightened them, but because it waited. Waiting was a thing mountain folk understood, waiting for rain, for crops, for letters that never came. But a house that waited was different. It suggested memory, and memory was dangerous. The older generation remembered Jonas Marin, the man who built it. A carpenter by trade, he'd come from Abingdon, Virginia, sometime around 1856. He was tall, quiet, with the posture of someone who listened more than he spoke. He wore black even in summer and kept his tools wrapped in oilcloth as if they were holy relics. Some said he could tell the weight of a soul by measuring the box meant to hold its body. That was his craft. Coffins. Asterisk still, he made fine furniture. 2 rocking chairs for new mothers, hope chests for brides, tables that lasted generations. He built things that outlived the hands that paid for them. In the spring of 1858, Jonas Marin married Eleanor Price, the daughter of a tanner from the next valley. She was 19, red-haired, and fond of singing hymns while hanging laundry by the creek. The townsfolk said she softened him. They'd see him pause in the road just to watch her wave. He built the house for her 3 rooms down, 2 up, porch wide enough for rocking chairs. Every beam measured by hand. He felled the pines himself. Dried the planks by the fire, carved her initials into the lintel above the door. When he finished, the house smelled of resin and promise, but promises rot quicker than pine. Eleanor died before the paint dried. Childbirth, the midwife said, though whispers spoke of fever. The baby was stillborn. Jonas buried them behind the house, beneath a cedar tree he refused to cut. After the funeral, he sealed the bedroom door and nailed it shut from the outside. For years afterward, he worked alone. Each winter he grew thinner, his face paler, his eyes distant like someone listening for a voice from another room. When neighbors tried to speak with him, he'd nod politely but never answer. One said he once heard Jonas mumbling through the floorboards late at night, repeating measurements under his breath. 5'2" by 1'7". 5'2", 1'7". By 1860, he stopped coming to town altogether. Mail piled up at the post office until the clerk burned it for kindling. When the war came, Elk Hollow lost 12 men, but Jonas Marin was not among them. He had vanished long before the cannons. Only the house remained, and the door that never latched. Asterisk rumors in the hills. Every generation adds its own verse to a story. Children dared each other to touch the porch steps. Hunters claimed their hounds refused to go near the place. One trapper swore he saw light in the upstairs window on a moonless night, a single candle, steady as a heartbeat. The preacher's wife once said she dreamed of Eleanor Marin standing in the doorway, Apron clean, face blank, asking if her husband had come home yet. Old Tobias Holt, the blacksmith, put it plain, some houses don't need people to live in 'em. They remember how. That memory lingered like a bruise over Elk Hollow, autumn 1878. By the time Elijah Boone arrived, the town had nearly forgotten Jonas Marin's name. Boone was 33, a logger from Wythe County, looking for a place to settle. He was a practical man, unbothered by superstition. When the land agent mentioned an abandoned property in the hollow, good beams, dry roof, and free if he'd keep it up, Boone took the offer without hesitation. He found the road overgrown, but the house stood straight. No vines breached the siding, no rot in the foundation. Inside, the air was thick but strangely warm, like someone had left a fire smoldering the night before. Dust lay evenly across the floors except for one trail leading from the front door to the staircase. He followed it upward to the bedroom with the nailed-shut door. The boards were old, but the nails were bright. In his journal that evening, Boone wrote, "Place sound enough. Porch solid, roof tight. Yet it feels as though I've stepped into another man's breath." He decided to stay. The first night Boone unrolled his bedding by the hearth. He listened to the forest outside, owls calling, branches settling. Then, just before sleep, came the faintest creak from upstairs. A slow rhythm, like a footstep. Pause. Footstep. He told himself it was wood shrinking in the cold. But then something tapped 3 times against the inside of the wall, just behind his headboard. He sat up, heart hammering. Silence followed. Then the smell, not rot, not mold, pine tar. Fresh, sharp, impossible after 20 years. At dawn, the house looked the same. The door still ajar, the hearth cold. He laughed at himself and went about repairing the shutters. But when he returned from the well, he found his hammer laid neatly on the windowsill. He was certain he'd left it on the porch. He told no one. Elk Hollow's whispers * by the week's end. Word had spread that someone had moved into the Marin house. Children gathered on the ridge to watch for smoke. The storekeeper said Boone looked paler than when he first came, though he still bought lamp oil gallons of it. The blacksmith asked him once if he planned to open the cellar. Boone only shrugged. "Ain't any use for it," he said. Yet that night, a wagoner passing through heard hammering from the hollow. Slow, deliberate, echoing like a heartbeat under the earth. In November, Boone appeared at the tavern, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. He drank without speaking until someone asked what troubled him. He said he heard someone walking in the house after midnight, but when he looked, every door was closed. He nailed the front door shut from the inside only to find it open again by morning. The hinges didn't squeal, it simply unlatched. He laughed then, a brittle sound, and said perhaps Jonas Marin had come home at last. No one laughed with him. The ledger of wood and flesh. 2 weeks later, Reverend Calhoun decided to pay Boone a visit. He took his Bible and a lantern, trudging through sleet until the hollow opened before him. The Marin house loomed through the gray, the door wide again, despite Boone's claim it was sealed. Inside, the smell of pine tar was overpowering. The hearth lay cold, yet the air shimmered with heat like breath on glass. On the mantel rested a thin layer of sawdust, and beside it, a small wooden box. Calhoun opened it to find a measuring tape coiled neatly, numbers worn smooth by use. Then he heard movement upstairs, slow, weighted. He called out, "Mr. Boone?" No reply, only the steady thump of footsteps crossing from one end of the hall to the other. The Reverend climbed the stairs, lantern shaking. At the top, he saw the nailed-shut bedroom door, but every nail was gone. The boards leaned loose against the frame. He didn't open it. Instead, he turned to leave and noticed, on the hallway wall, 7 faint outlines where picture frames once hung. All the same size. All empty. By the time he reached town again, dawn had broken. He told no one what he'd seen, only that Boone was keeping company, best left alone. Within days, Elijah Boone vanished. His tools remained by the hearth. His journal lay open to a blank page dot, and that smell pine tar lingered for weeks. The waiting asterisk after Boone's disappearance. Elk Hollow went back to pretending the house wasn't there. But travelers passing through spoke of a candle burning in the upper window, steady against the wind. Old Tobias Holt said he once heard hammering from the ridge and counted the beats 20 in a row, then silence. He swore each blow came slower than the last, as if someone were driving nails into their own heart. The road to the hollow washed out that winter. The townsfolk took it as mercy. But some nights, when fog hung low and the moon caught the river just right, they claimed to see a faint shape at the far edge of the trees, a doorway standing alone, white in the dark. And sometimes it opened. The autumn rains had already turned Elk Hollow's roads to mud by the time Elijah Boone began writing his daily notes. He had been in the Marin house barely a fortnight, yet the entries filled half a ledger. The handwriting grew tighter as the pages went on letters, shrinking as though pressed by a trembling hand. No one in town ever read the journal whole. What survived was found years later, brittle from damp, its spine eaten through by silverfish. But those pages tell the shape of a man caught between reason and something older than madness. The first weeks Boone began as a skeptic. His first entries were practical: roof sound, rafters dry, need new hinges for cellar door, smell of pine heavier each morning. Then dreamed of hammering steady and far off. Woke to find nails on bedside table. He wrote of hearing soft humming in the night, a woman's voice without words. He described a draft that moved through closed rooms as if the air itself had intent. He measured it, even placing bits of thread across doorways, watching them stir though no breeze passed through. He kept working by day, repairing steps, mending shutters. But each time he hammered a nail into the wood, the sound seemed to echo from underneath the floorboards, as though something below were answering. After the fifth night, he stopped repairing altogether. The visit of Mary Ray on October 18th. Mary Ray, a widow who kept the tavern, walked up to bring Boone some bread and salt pork. He met her at the porch, polite but distracted. She offered the food. He hesitated before taking it. She noticed his hands blistered, ringed in black resin. "You been tar sealing the roof?" she asked. "Aye," he said, "though the roof don't leak." She told him he looked tired. He replied that the house was restless at night. When she asked what he meant, he said, "It dreams through the walls. I can feel it waiting to breathe." Mary laughed nervously and started down the path. Halfway to the gate, she turned back and saw Boone still standing there, head tilted toward the upstairs window as if listening. The curtain shifted, though no one was inside. That was the last time anyone saw him in daylight. Boone's entries. October 22nd to 2922 October. They're scratching in the chimney. Small, deliberate. Too steady for rats. The 23rd of October. Found a board loose under the stairs. Beneath it, sawdust still warm. Someone's been working down there. The 24th of October door opened at dawn. I closed it and spoke aloud. "You may stay, but you'll not command me." The house sighed. I swear I heard it. The 25th of October. The smell grows stronger. It clings to my clothes. Sometimes it tastes like blood on the tongue. The 26th of October. Found a letter tucked behind the mantelstone, sealed in wax. The initials J.M. The 27th of October. I should not have read it. 29. October. The hammering began again last night. Measured intervals. 7 strokes. Then silence. The letter Boone mentioned was never recovered in his hand. But a copy exists in county records, written by Jonas Marin himself. Dated November 1859. Evidence fragment number 1. The Marin letter, 1859. To whomsoever finds this house, know that it is made to outlast flesh. I built it to remember her, my Eleanor, so that her breath may not leave these hills. The beams are marked with her name. The walls hold her measure. She could not remain in the grave they gave her. Earth takes too quickly. If the house stands, it means she still waits. If you dwell here, tread softly. Speak low. Do not mend what is broken. Do not open what I have sealed. For the house knows its maker, and it knows his grief. I have heard her steps these nights, light as dust, passing the window where she once watched the rain. I will join her soon. When the nails are driven, we shall be one frame again. Jonas Marinboon wrote beneath the letter in his own script. He built her into it. The second month November arrived cruel and early. The ridge iced over. The hollow frozen shade. Boone stopped coming to town entirely. Children said they saw smoke rising from the chimney, though no fire burned when anyone checked. The only constant was the smell of pine tar and iron. One evening, Reverend Calhoun stood outside the church after service and saw light blooming from the Marin house window. Not flickering like a candle, but pulsing faint, rhythmic, almost like breath. He began to pray, though he could not say why. Inside, Boone was unraveling. His notes became frantic. Asterisk the 3rd of November. There are voices now. One male, one female. They argue through the floor. She begs. He measures the 5th of November. I dream of coffins stacked like stairs leading upward. I climb, but the lids open beneath me. 7 November. Something has taken my reflection. The mirror in the hall shows the room but not me. The 10th of November found sawdust in my bed. Fresh. 12 November. The cellar door moves when I am near it. It breathes in. He began writing at odd hours, sometimes mid-sentence as though waking from a trance. His final coherent note before the disappearance reads, "If the house is her body, then I have been living in its heart." Witness testimony. Tobias Holt, the blacksmith, told his version years later. To a young surveyor who wrote it down in a report now archived in Charleston. I went to check on him, the Boone feller. Heard he'd taken ill. When I reached the hollow, the whole place was silent but for the wind. No birds, no crickets. The door was open, swinging gentle. Inside, cold as a tomb. I called out, but only echo answered. I went up the stairs, seeing dust thick on every tread save one. The door to the back room was shut again, nailed from inside this time. I knocked. Something knocked back, same number of times. I ain't gone near that place since. Holt said his hands smelled of pitch for days afterward. No matter how hard he scrubbed, the house responds. What the house became after Boone's disappearance can only be guessed. Hunters reported seeing boards nailed freshly over windows that had rotted years before. One even claimed to find his own name carved into the porch railing, though he'd never set foot on it. A deputy sent to inspect found the cellar door, blocked by timber that hadn't been there months earlier. He pried one plank loose and peered inside, then stumbled back, retching. When asked what he saw, he only muttered, "They're all the same size." No one pressed him further. The season of silence that winter, heavy snows cut Elk Hollow off from the nearest town. Smoke no longer rose from the Marin chimney, but a light still glowed faintly on clear nights. Children said if you stood at the frozen creek and looked just right, you could see a figure behind the upstairs curtain, tall, gaunt, its hand resting on the glass. The preacher refused to speak of it in sermons. The men in the tavern changed subject whenever the house was mentioned. But sometimes, when drink loosened tongues, they whispered that Boone hadn't been taken at all, that the house had finished him. Old Tobias summed it in one line. He came to fix the house. But the house fixed him. The hidden journal fragment in 1881. 3 years later, a flood exposed part of the cellar. Among the debris was a single page of Boone's ledger, pressed between boards. The ink had bled, but a few words could be made out. She walks now. Her steps are mine. The beams hum when she breathes, I think. I think the nails keep time with my heart. The handwriting ended there. Mid-dash stroke dot, That page rests today in the county archive. Though some archivists claim it still smells faintly of pine, the letter's legacy after Boone's vanishing. The letter of Jonas Marin became something of a local relic. Folks passed copies around campfires, each version a little different. Some said Marin had been a spiritualist, trying to bind his wife's soul in timber. Others swore the cedar he used for her coffin had grown into the very frame of the house. Its roots still alive beneath the floor. A miner named Caleb Deere once claimed to dig near the foundation and struck something hollow, not stone. Not wood, but resonant, like a vast chamber below. He left that pit unfilled, saying it listened when he struck it. The house in waiting by 1882. Nature began reclaiming the road. Trees leaned inward, hemming off the path. Travelers found the hollow overgrown, the house half hidden by vines, yet the structure remained untouched. The paint peeled, the roof sagged, but not a single board had fallen. Storms would flatten barns in the valley, but the Marin house stood. Always the same, always watching. Some nights when the wind turned from the north, it carried with it a low moan, too deep for any beast. Folks said it was the house calling, asking, perhaps, for its next craftsman. Closing, image one cold March morning. Mary Ray walked to the ridge before dawn. Mist hung low, thick as wool. As the sun rose, she saw for the briefest moment a figure at the Marin porch. A man in a dark coat, head bowed, hammer in hand. She thought it was Boone returned. She called his name. The figure lifted its head slowly. It wasn't Boone. The face was gray as ash, eyes white as frost. It smiled, turned, and stepped through the open door. The house swallowed him whole. When the fog cleared, the porch was empty. But from far across the valley came a single echo, thud, thud. The sound of nails driven home. The winter of 1883 was long and bitter in Elk Hollow. Snow came early, swallowing roads, breaking fences, and silencing the hills. Fires burned low. Wood was scarce. And in that quiet hunger of January, whispers of the Marin house returned. Children who'd been born after its last inhabitant vanished were told to stay clear of the hollow, because the wind there speaks too plain. But Reverend Thomas Calhoun, now in his late 60s and half blind, said he dreamed of it 3 nights in a row, the same flicker of light in the upper window, and a voice calm, patient, calling his name. He tried to ignore it. On the 3rd night, the dream changed. The light had turned red, and the voice whispered, "The measure is wrong." Calhoun woke with blood on his palms. He'd clenched them until his nails broke the skin. He took it as a summons. The Reverend returns on January 19th. He saddled his mule and rode through sleet toward the hollow. The valley below the ridge was thick with fog. The air smelled faintly of smoke and resin. When he reached the clearing, he saw the Marin house exactly as he'd left it 5 years before, porch straight, roof unbroken, windows clouded. The front door hung slightly ajar, snow gathered in its frame. He dismounted, lantern in hand. The air inside was warm. The Reverend called out, "Mr. Boone?" Then quieter, "Jonas Marin?" Silence answered, heavy as snow. Dust lay thick on the floor, but near the hearth there was a pattern, faint lines, square outlines drawn in ash. Calhoun brushed at them with his sleeve and realized they were measurements. Inches, feet. Each marking ended in a number written in the old carpenter's hand. He followed the pattern to the far corner where a board was slightly lifted. Beneath it, more writing, done in red chalk, a single phrase repeated twice. Ledger beneath the floor. The discovery, the Reverend pried the board loose with the handle of his lantern. Beneath was a cavity lined with tar and pitch, perfectly dry. Inside lay a wooden box sealed with wax. The smell of pine hit him like a wave. He broke the seal and found a small book, wrapped in linen. Pages yellow and curled. It was Jonas Marin's ledger, not the kind for debts or sales, but for something deeper. On the first page, Dated April 1858, he read, "Built the frame today. Measured each beam to the inch. The length of the wall to match her arm span. The height of the doorway to match my grief." The Reverend turned the page. The heartwood sings when struck. I hear her voice in it. "If I carve deep enough," she answers. He felt the chill crawl up his spine. Further entries listed names not of customers, but of measurements paired with initials. EP52X 17CH59X18, MR54X 16 at the end of the list. JM61X1 unfinished. The Reverend realized what he held was not a record of coffins sold, but coffins prepared. He counted 7 names. He whispered a prayer, though it faltered halfway out his mouth. The church ledger back in Elk Hollow. Reverend Calhoun dug through the church archives, a crate of papers stored under the pulpit since before the war. There, in a mildewed register, he found the same initials listed in the burial records. Eleanor Price Marin, EP 1858. Caleb Holt, CH, 1859. Mary Ray, MR, 1860. Each recorded death had occurred near the hollow. Each body supposedly interred at the hillside graveyard, yet no stones bore their names. The Reverend's blood turned cold. Mary Ray had not died in 1860. She'd been seen alive in 1878, which meant the ledger listed more than time. A confession in the margins. The final pages of Marin's ledger held a single entry written shakily. The ink smudged by what looked like tears. "The work is near done. The 7th must be taken by her choosing, not mine. She whispers now in every beam. She says the door must stay open so she may come and go until I finish the heart of the house." And below that, scrawled like an afterthought, "The house keeps her voice, but it takes mine." Calhoun closed the book, trembling. He realized then that every sound, every creak, every groan of wood could be the house speaking. He left at dawn, carrying the ledger under his coat, frost cracking under his boots. But as he passed the edge of the hollow, he heard something faint behind him. 3 slow hammer strikes, deliberate, spaced by the rhythm of breath. Thud. Thud. The ledger's curse when he returned to town. Calhoun locked the book in the church's chest, swearing to burn it come spring. But he never did. By February, he had fallen ill, a fever that worsened each night he dreamt of the house. His assistant, Clara Holt, recorded his ramblings during those final weeks. The notes still survive in the county archive. He speaks of beams and breath, says the house hums when he prays. Once woke screaming that the floorboards had mouths. On the 14th, he whispered a phrase over and over: "Ledger beneath the floor. Ledger beneath the floor." On the night of February 19th, the Reverend disappeared. His bed was undisturbed, his coat still hanging on the door. But outside the church, the snow showed footprints bare, leading north toward the hollow. They stopped halfway down the road. A search party found nothing. Only a small scrap of paper wedged in the church door. Torn from the ledger's last page, "The measure is right." Testimony: Clara Holt, March 1883. "He'd told me the house wasn't haunted, but alive, that it was still being built. He said every man who entered took up a hammer whether he meant to or not. He said it wanted to be finished. I asked what it was building. He only said, 'A memory that breathes.'" The house under snow. That spring thaw brought mudslides that stripped parts of the ridge. The road to the hollow vanished under rock and ice. For months, no one dared to climb it. Then, in May, hunters from over the mountain claimed they saw smoke rising again from where the Marin house stood. They swore it wasn't wood smoke, it was thicker, darker, and carried the scent of pitch. When the thaw cleared the path, 3 men from Elk Hollow went to look. What they found defied weather and time. The house stood untouched, the snow melted in a perfect circle around it. On the porch, nailed neatly to the doorframe, was a square of parchment, another page from Marin's ledger. The writing was bones. He was right. She waits beneath the floor. I hear her now when I measure. The house has remembered its name. The men fled before nightfall. The parish investigation in 1884. A traveling deacon from Charleston arrived to investigate the disappearances. His name was Father Samuel Drennan. Unlike the mountain folk, he dismissed superstition. He cataloged the accounts, inspected the ruins, and wrote a 20-page report. His tone was logical, academic until the final paragraph. The structure exhibits no decay inconsistent with age. Yet I found, within a sealed wall cavity near the hearth, fragments of cloth bearing human hair. When burned, the smell was of tar and resin. I believe the builder used his wife's remains to seal the joints. This is not a house. It is a reliquary. The ledger's final page, when the parish sent for the ledger itself, they found the chest empty. The lock was unbroken. No one ever saw the book again. Clara Holt claims she heard something the night it vanished, the bell in the church ringing 3 times at midnight, though the rope had been cut since the Reverend's death. When she went to the door, a single nail lay on the threshold. Bright and new, the hollow, 1885, 2 years later. A flood swept through the valley, uprooting trees and tearing bridges from their moorings. When the water receded, the Marin house was gone. No splinters, no foundation, nothing. Only the cedar tree where Eleanor had been buried remained, though its bark was slick with pitch. And its roots formed a perfect square, the size of a cellar, in the mud nearby. A farmer found a plank polished smooth, still smelling of tar. Across it were words carved deep and sure, "Ledger beneath the floor." He kept it as firewood. When he burned it that winter, his house caught flame from within the walls. Afterward, the archivist's note, in 1911. An archivist cataloging church documents in McDowell County wrote an annotation beside the Reverend's death record. Local reports persist of a whispering hollow along Pine Fork Creek. Travelers describe the sound of hammering at dusk, though no structures remain. The air there smells of pitch. Locals call it the waiting house. No map marks its place now, but old miners say if you camp near the ridge and listen between the wind, you can still hear the counting, slow, steady. As if measuring boards for a coffin no one has yet ordered. By the turn of the century, Elk Hollow had become a name on a ledger, one of 100 small valleys swallowed by the railroads. Coal seams cut through its heart like veins, and new men came with dynamite and steel to hollow out what the mountains still hid. They found the bones of mines, of churches, and of the dead, but what they uncovered beneath McDowell Ridge that summer of 1904 was not a mine. It was a memory. The survey crew, the Cumberland and Western Line, had sent 6 men to mark a route for new tracks. They followed Pine Fork Creek, where the old road once ran, and set camp near what maps labeled simply Marin Hollow. Their foreman, Charles L. Danner, wrote meticulous notes. In his field book, still preserved in the archives, he described the terrain in dry engineer's language until June 8th, when the tone changed. Unusual resonance beneath soil when struck with pick. Sounds hollow. Ground smells of tar, though no visible seep. Suggest investigating cavity. 2 days later, they began digging. The unearthed foundation, the men expected stone. What they found were boards blackened, smooth, and perfectly aligned. The wood had not rotted. In fact, it was warm to the touch. Danner ordered a larger pit cut. By nightfall, they had exposed what looked like the corner of a foundation, squared and precise. The boards interlocked with no nails visible. When struck, the wood rang like iron. One worker, Samuel Grant, claimed he felt it vibrate under his hand. He swore he heard a faint hum rising from the ground, like someone sawing softly far away. They stopped digging at dusk. But that night, as they drank around the fire, the air grew thick with the scent of pitch. It clung to their throats, sweet and suffocating. By morning, the boards they had uncovered were gone, buried again, though no landslide had occurred. The earth was smooth, undisturbed, as if the ground itself had closed. Testimony of Charles Danner, Field Notes, June 10, 1904. Ground reclaimed overnight. Disturbed men. Grant swears he saw figure moving near tree line at dawn tall, coat to ankles. Claims it watched him, then faded into mist. Cannot confirm. Ordered men to fill pit and relocate camp 1 mile east. Later that same day, the crew's cook reported the hammering faint but rhythmic, coming from beneath the new site. Each blow was followed by a pause, as though waiting for reply. They dug again, against orders, but found only soil and one wooden square, a perfectly cut plank with writing etched deep, ledger beneath the floor. Danner confiscated it and locked it in his chest. That night, he dreamed of staircases built from coffins. The engineer. A week later, the company sent an engineer, Mr. Everett Sloan, to inspect the survey's progress. He was a rational man, college-trained, immune to folklore. His report begins with measurements of terrain and angles, but shifts abruptly into unease. Arrived at camp noon June 17th. Noted odor of resin. Men uneasy, whispering about sounds in earth. At 1:10 p.m., ground beneath pit subsided by 3 inches with no tremor, soil compacted as if hollow space collapsed. Upon inspection, detected void approximately 6 feet deep. Found timber within treated wood, late 19th century. Texture consistent with hand-planed lumber, notably warm. Sloan pried at the plank. Beneath, a cavity about the size of a coffin. Inside, a small iron box sealed with tar. He opened it. Inside lay a single page of paper, yellowed but legible. If you read this, you are standing where memory sleeps. Do not wake it. The heart is unfinished. G. and Sloan recorded this as a likely hoax, but that night, his tent collapsed. When the others rushed to help, they found no sign of him. Only a hammer, half buried, still warm. The panic after Sloan's disappearance. 3 workers deserted the site. The remaining 2 refused to dig further. Danner wrote, "Site abandoned. Ground reburied. Unexplained knocking continues after dusk. Sounds resemble distant carpentry." He turned the crew southward toward safer ground. The company closed the file under unstable soil. But before leaving, Danner placed the carved plank ledger beneath the floor in his satchel. He kept it for 20 years. In his old age, when asked why, he'd only say, "It wasn't just a saying, it was an instruction." The archivist's discovery, 1919, when Danner died. His belongings were donated to the Charleston Historical Society. Among them was the plank, still smelling faintly of tar. The archivist, Miss Ellen Rook, catalogued it without interest until she noticed faint impressions on its underside, reversed letters pressed by moisture. Marin, Jonas, 1858. She grew curious and requested parish files from McDowell County. Within them, she found the lost ledger fragment of Reverend Calhoun, recovered after the flood. The 2 artifacts, the plank and the fragment, fit together like adjoining puzzle pieces. The impressions of letters aligned exactly. When she pressed them together, the smell of pine intensified. The wood felt warm. Ellen Rook's journal, October 2, 1919. Something strange about the grain of the wood. When light hits it at angle, patterns appear almost like fingerprints. The lines resemble the veins of a leaf or of flesh. Heard a tapping under the archive floor last night. Building is stone. I dream often now. A man stands in a half-built room, measuring with his hands. Each beam hums when he touches it. He turns to me and says, "The house must remember us all." The plank now bleeds resin from its edge. I cannot find the seam. It pulses slightly when I hold it. Her entries end abruptly on October 6th. She was found in the archive's basement, unconscious but alive. The only mark on her body, 7 small punctures along her palms, as though from nails. The plank was gone. A letter from Charleston, 1919 weeks later. A letter arrived at the Historical Society, postmarked from McDowell County but unsigned. It contained only a folded page. "The house is finished now. You may stop digging." The hollow revisited in 1921. A new rail line finally passed near Pine Fork Creek. The foreman, unaware of the legend, ordered a cut through the ridge. The dynamite blast revealed layers of compacted soil, and beneath boards. Every man on the crew stopped when they saw it. The wood gleamed black and wet, though no rain had fallen in weeks. Beneath it, an open cavity, a cellar, perfectly square. The air that escaped was hot and sweet, thick with the scent of resin and decay. Inside, they saw what looked like a wall of coffins stacked neatly, one atop the other, but fused together, their sides melted, impossible to separate. Each bore initials carved into the surface. At the bottom, E.P. At the top, J.M. They covered the pit by nightfall, sealed it with rock, and laid the tracks elsewhere. But on the day of the first train's passage, a strange thing occurred. As the engine neared the ridge, every hammer in the workers' belts struck against its handle 3 times in unison. Thud, thud. The house remembers by 1925, the ridge had grown quiet again. The tracks rusted from disuse. The mine closed. Only hunters came that way. They spoke of hearing wood creak underground, of boards shifting like ribs beneath the soil. One hunter, Mason Weller, described it best in a letter found after his death. "It's not gone, that house. It's turned inward, folded under like a sleeping beast. The ground there beats if you stand still enough, same rhythm as a heart. It don't want to be found. It wants to finish what it started." He claimed to have seen a glow one night, faint ember, moving just under the earth, traveling slowly along the old foundation line. He followed it until dawn, where it vanished beneath the cedar tree. The roots there formed a perfect square. The sound beneath locals still avoid Marin Hollow. They say when storms roll down the mountains, the thunder comes late, as if something under the ground is echoing it back. Old men swear the house was never a haunting, but a machine for memory. Each man who entered it was measured and added, not killed, but remembered in timber, weight, and breath. The house took them, one by one, until it could stand alone, sustained by what it remembered. They say that's why the smell of pine lingers on certain nights, the scent of something still curing, still drying, waiting to be touched again by a craftsman's hand. In 1930, a photographer named Arthur Lyle captured a panoramic shot of Pine Fork Valley. When the plate was developed, there appeared faintly, in the background, fog, the outline of a house that did not exist. Whitewashed walls. Open door. A figure standing on the porch, head bowed, holding a hammer. Every copy of that photo developed afterward showed nothing but trees, except the original negative, which still smells faintly of pine. By 1937, the world had changed. Radio voices filled the valleys where only owls once called. Automobiles replaced mule tracks. The hills trembled not with thunder but with dynamite. Yet Elk Hollow remained uncharted on state maps, void of trees and mist. Locals still refused to settle there. Not for fear, they said, but for respect. That year, the Charleston Historical Society sent one last researcher to catalog the region's vanishing ghost towns. Her name was Dr. Isabel Harrow, a folklorist fresh from Boston University, interested in the intersection of grief and architecture. Her assignment: collect oral histories of lost Appalachian settlements before they slipped into legend. She was 32 and pragmatic, armed with a recorder, a camera, and a mind that did not frighten easily. When she asked about Elk Hollow, the locals turned away. One old miner told her, "If you go there, miss, mind your steps. It still counts, em." The archivists wrote Isabel found the trail barely visible beneath laurel and ash. For 2 miles the forest closed around her until the air smelled of pitch and wet iron. At last she came upon a clearing, an unnatural square, cut in the trees, The earth there was bare, packed smooth, as if something massive had once sat upon it and sank into the ground. She noted in her field journal, no sign of foundations or stone. Soil soft to touch but dry. Pressing ear to ground, I detect a dull throb, not machinery. Not water, rhythmic, slow. She set up camp by the cedar tree, the one locals claimed grew from Eleanor Marin's grave. At dusk, the air cooled. Yet beneath the roots, the earth remained warm. When she laid a palm on it, the warmth beat once, twice, then ceased. The first night her recording from that night survives. A grainy tape, the first 30 seconds filled with wind. Then her voice soft, uneasy. Isabel Harrow. Tape 1. Something moves beneath me. It sounds like wood flexing. There's no structure here, yet the ground creaks. It's as if a house is breathing under the dirt. At 2:17 on the tape, 3 knocks sound hollow, spaced, metal on wood. She gasps, then whispers, hammering. The tape cuts there. The unearthed plank morning light revealed nothing but dew. Still, when Isabel dug a small trench beside her tent to steady a tripod, the spade struck something solid. It was a board. Black and oily, its grain perfectly smooth. Across it, etched so deep that her fingers caught in the grooves, was a familiar phrase, ledger beneath the floor. The letters were fresh, the tar within them still wet. She wrapped the board and stored it in her Jeep. That night she dreamed of a door standing alone in a field. Beyond it was darkness, but from within the dark came a voice that sounded like her own, whispering, "Measure me." The interview on her way back to town. Isabel stopped to speak with Martha Boone, an aged woman who kept a store by the river. At the mention of the Marin house, Martha grew quiet and poured 2 cups of coffee. "My granddaddy Elijah was the last to live there," she said. "They never found him, but I seen his hammer. Pa kept it in a box under his bed. Sometimes it rattled at night." She leaned close. "Folks say the house ain't haunted. It's hungry. It remembers who built it, and it wants to finish its work." Martha then told her something Isabel did not write down until later. Every 7th generation, someone with the name Boone or Marin hears the hammering again. The return despite warnings. Isabel returned to the clearing 2 weeks later to take photographs. The sky was low and green. When the first flash of lightning came, she snapped a plate. The negative developed perfectly clear save for one thing. A house, white against the storm, exactly where she stood when she took it. She checked her equipment. No double exposure. No trick of light. The house was simply there on film and not in the world. Her final entry reads, "Perhaps the house never fell. Perhaps it folded beneath us, waiting for its owner to return." If memory is structure, then every being remembers the touch that made it. It waits for that touch again. The door is open now. The disappearance. She was due back in Charleston on September 4, 1937. She never arrived. Her vehicle was found on the old hollow road, engine cold, keys in the seat. Inside the trunk lay her camera and notebooks and the blackboard she had unearthed. But this time, new words had appeared beneath the first, etched as if by fire. "Welcome home." The film roll contained 6 frames. The first 5 showed only trees. The 6th showed the Marin house fully intact, door open. A figure standing in the threshold, a woman with a camera at her side. The archivist's note, 1951, 14 years later. A box arrived unmarked at the Charleston Historical Society. Inside was Isabel Harrow's recorder. The tape had rotted, but a few seconds could still be played. A woman's voice, tired, calm, whispered, "The house is not evil. It is lonely. It waits because it remembers us better than we remember ourselves." Then the click of a hammer. 3 times. The tape snapped. The society locked the recorder in storage. The room where it was kept developed a smell of pine that never faded. Last witness in the spring of 1972. A retired rail worker named Henry Danner, the foreman's grandson, told a reporter he went hunting near the old ridge. He claimed the ground there had risen slightly, forming a perfect square of higher earth. When he stepped onto it, the soil hollowed under his boots and he heard a sound from below. The slow creak of boards settling back into place. He looked down and saw a faint impression of a doorframe. Around his feet, and then the ground whispered. Clear as a voice through wood, we were waiting. He never returned. The voice that remains today. The maps show nothing where Elk Hollow stood. The road is gone. The creek rerouted by flood. Yet campers on the ridge still speak of hearing hammering when fog rolls through slow, methodical, coming from beneath their feet. Sometimes the sound stops, and a moment later comes a single knock from behind them. As if from a door that isn't there, they say if you knock back. You dream of a house the next night whitewashed, still, its door open. A candle burning in the upstairs window, and when you wake, your hands smell of tar. Final entry. The house that waited. Some stories end where they began. In this one, the house never ended at all. It merely sank into its own memory, pulling those who sought to understand it down with it. Jonas Marin built a structure to defy grief, to preserve his wife's shape in timber and pitch. But in doing so, he gave that grief a body, and it learned to wait. Each generation added its measure. A hammer here, a journal there, a heartbeat beneath the floor. The house became not a place, but a memory that builds itself anew whenever someone remembers it. And so it waits patient as pine, immovable as sorrow for the next to knock.